When Ant-Man and Hawkeye join forces, somebody's gonna get it.
Not Thanos, though, because apparently him threatening the entire universe wasn't enough to get either of you off your asses. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Tales Showcase, where we've always known that carnivals are the epicenter of a dark, criminal empire. I'm your host, the Watcher of New Earth. Well, Ant-Man and the Wasp is out today. Hopefully it offers a good excuse for why Scott Lang didn't even call the Avengers to wish them good luck against their fight with Thanos. The other notable hero that was missing from Infinity War was the Avenger voted least likely to get a solo movie, Hawkeye. So it seems appropriate that today we look at a comic where nobody showed up to their team-up.
The Avengers number 223 was released in 1982 and was written by David Michelinie, who aside from creating the character of Scott Lang, was best known for his work on Spider-Man and Iron Man. The issue was drawn by Greg LaRocque, whose work also includes The Flash and the Legion of Superheroes.
Yeah, there's not really that much to discuss concerning the background of this issue. So, let's not stall any longer. This is The Avengers number 223.
The story, like many of my nightmares, begins in Long Island. It's the Carson Carnival of traveling wonders as we see an uncostumed Clint Barton walking about. Apparently, before he joined the Avengers, Clint was a performer here and has been summoned by his former boss's daughter, who now owns the place. Of course, he believes it all to be a joke.
Yeah, it's the classic ask a superhero for help gag. You all know it.
His thinking has changed, however, as he's literally thrown when he approaches the owner's quarters and even has a gun pulled on him. He walks away, but quickly changes into his Hawkeye garb to further inspect the scene. Elsewhere, Scott Lang is arguing with his daughter Cassie on whether or not she can ride the dangerous spin and heave. Scott is distracted, however, as he sees Hawkeye run by. Suspecting trouble, Scott caves and lets Cassie on the ride. He also gives the skeezy guy operating the ride a stack of money to keep her on the ride indefinitely.
Okay, I get that this is an emergency, but you couldn't have given her like $100 to waste at the ring toss or something? Not a perfect solution, but yours seems almost like a punishment.
Meanwhile, Hawkeye's in the owner's office only to find that the goons from before had already taken her. Hawkeye makes short work of them and grabs her. Clint and Marcy, the owner, head over to an empty tent. They stop to catch their breath as Hawkeye wastes no time in mentioning that she's beautiful.
Dude, not the time or place. Put your arrow back in your quiver.
They're interrupted, however, as the lights turn on to reveal training equipment and the villain responsible, the Taskmaster. Hawkeye recognizes him from the Avengers' files, calling him a goon peddler. Watch your mouth, bowbender.
Is that supposed to be an insult? 'Cause I'm pretty sure that's what he has written on his resume.
Taskmaster explains that aside from his villain training schools where he trains grunts for hire, he's taking advantage of the carnival's constant moving to expand into a mobile market. Marcy and her employees are only cooperating under, threat of death. Hawkeye fires an arrow, which Taskmaster deflects. Using his photographic reflexes, which allow him to mimic anything he's seen, he employs various maneuvers from several different heroes to catch Hawkeye off guard.
Now, this scene isn't bad, but I can't help but feel that it would be stronger if Taskmaster wasn't giving us a real-time walkthrough of everything that he was doing. He's like that awkward kid at a middle school dance who's quietly mumbling the steps to himself as he's doing them. And before you say anything, no, that wasn't me. I wasn't allowed at school dances after the frozen yogurt incident.
Hawkeye surrenders when he sees that Taskmaster has Marcy. Scott, meanwhile, now decked out in his Ant-Man costume and fleet of ants in tow, flies to Hawkeye's aid. Hawkeye is currently trapped in the lion's cage that's being electrocuted to prevent escape. The shock in question isn't enough to kill, but will knock him unconscious. That's in case you want to make it easier for Kitty to have Din-Din. I'll have you for Din-Din when I get out of here.
Wow, that's not the insult that you think it is.
The lion looks set to attack, but Ant-Man arrives at the last second, hurling it into the cage. He then shrinks himself and Clint to escape through the bars. They confront Taskmaster again and fight off his goons. While they're triumphant, Taskmaster has slipped away. Get a call on to the other Avengers, Marcy. Me and Ant-Man will try to put a worm in that teacher's apple. What? They confront Taskmaster once again, but he reveals that he's put an explosive in the dummy that's being shot out of a cannon, giving them the choice of apprehending him or saving the spectators. While Hawkeye initially tells Scott to save everyone so he can pursue, Scott convinces him that saving people is the real cause. They run into the tent only to see the dummy shot up into the air. This leads to the iconic imagery of Scott riding on one of Hawkeye's arrows. Scott then has to disarm the explosive as he and the dummy plummet to the ground. The dummy crashes and doesn't explode, Scott having been successful. Hawkeye, however, is concerned, believing his ally to be dead. Scott appears, however, to reassure him that after watching Raiders of the Lost Ark so many times, it becomes easy to leap from one thing to another.
Does that mean that you have photographic reflexes too? Because being able to see something on video and then able to replicate it completely sounds exactly like what Taskmaster does. Also, that's not something that most people can do. I've seen Raiders hundreds of times, and I still haven't been able to capture the charismatic energy of early 80s Harrison Ford. Or Harrison Ford anytime, really.
The story wraps up with Taskmaster escaping, the Avengers coming in to gather the goons, and Scott remembering, oh hey, I have a daughter, rushing over to where he left her. And the comic ends with Cassie asking if she can come back tomorrow to ride the spin and heave again.
Bull spit. Even if she wasn't traumatized by the ride, she would have gotten bored with it after riding it 10 times in one day. Anyway, that was Avengers number 223. It was fine.
I mean, don't get me wrong, there's nothing particularly wrong with it. The writing's strong enough, and the art is nice to look at. The one issue that I do have is that all the characters are a bit mouthy, which, suits characters like Scott Lang and Spider-Man fine, but for characters like Taskmaster that are meant to be sold on their badass status, well, let's just say maybe Boba Fett had the right idea by only speaking a couple lines. But either way, it's clearly a filler issue to tie the audience over until the next storyline. It's not the best ever, but it's certainly not awful. And at least it gave us that iconic Hawkeye-Ant-Man team-up.
A nice short story featuring some B-listers in the spotlight, but unless you're actively seeking it out, it can be easily skipped. Anyway, as always, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. This is the Watcher of New Earth, signing off.